Welcome to our highlight episode from Season 1 of Beyond the Wild.
Welcome to the very first episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Myself, Ron Hayes, coming to you from Wyoming, and some familiar faces and voices also with me tonight. Mark Raycroft.
Hey Ron, happy to be here. Excited to have a new podcast launching. Surprise, surprise.
Finish it. Surprise, surprise. Oh,
What's the finish? Surprise.
This is a family show, Mark. I can't do it.
See, I don't know that. All right.
Coming to us from Utah, Jason Untamed Loftus. Since we're talking about the UFC, we got to give your fight name.
There you go. I like that one. I'm gonna have to steal that.
Get kind of an iconic image of a reindeer, which is the same species as caribou in North America, albeit a different subspecies, and they're a little smaller in stature, in
stockier. Yep.
But to get that shot right away, I mean, did it work? Did you get it with the snow and like the ideal winter caribou?
The toughest part about that shot was exposing it. So because you're shooting in snow on snow, white on white. So to maintain the detail.
But don't you have mirrorless? Don't you have what you see is what you get?
Yeah.
Doesn't Canon do that?
Oh, you don't have to pay attention
but
to your
you don't know what kind of detail you're going to end up with. But it makes it easy. But yeah, exactly. So you bracket the heck out of it so you can bring out the detail in the reindeer. And then also the grains in the snow, that kind of thing. So good luck, Sparky. Let's find out how good you are. There's no way you're getting a dark background on this trip. And sure as heck, we get on the Zodiacs, and this bear starts walking this bank, and she's going up over these ridges and kind of staying above the shoreline. And all of a sudden, she just decides she's going to detour and go right down in the rocks. And I'm looking ahead at where she's headed, right? And I turned to Jason. Jason and I were in the same Zodiac. And I turned to Jason. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. She's headed right for this black set of rocks. And Jason just starts laughing. He goes, yeah, I told you I'll get it. And sure as heck, she went right for these black rocks and got this beautiful background, and the contrast of that clean white bear against those black rocks it was awesome.
Yeah.
But it sucked because I had to totally eat crow right there on the Zodiac. I don't know. We were there for 30, 40 minutes. The bear got up, meandered past the boat, parallel to the boat. Everybody's getting these great images. Goes past the boat, goes to the carcass. And then it laid there for, I don't know how long. It didn't matter. Time was standing still. Then we had the bear. So, but it went over and investigated the carcass, chewed on the carcass a little bit, played with it, hauled it around, threw it around. And then, like the bear was reading the same script, let the carcass go after it was a while because I was taking cell phone video or taking pictures, getting images from different positions. So we were there for a long time while it was with the carcass. And then she just got up and kind of meandered in this serpentine line going from ice to ice and came right to the boat. And I recorded that.
Book on caribou, and that's available everywhere. And from that, it was kind of the stepping off point from that. I've been filming caribou the whole duration of my career whenever opportunity presented itself. So, 25 years, well, maybe not, maybe 20 years. I've been going into caribou country on and off. And Newfoundland is where our photo tours are based out of. They're in an environment, a landscape that has a variety of situations for photography, which makes it very dramatic and exciting. And the weather in Newfoundland is very changeable. So the opportunity over a course of a week to have beautiful, rich evening light or overcast light with colors or moody light or fog, it should typically we get all of it in a week. Film them, try to do both. Mirrorless cameras is another high five for the technology. Just hit the button, to switch from stills to video is fantastic. But the point of this story is they ended up being in this water, in and out of it, on the shore, on this lake. And in Newfoundlanders, just to make sure I say it correctly, it's a pond. All lakes are ponds. So they're in this pond for 45 minutes. So they gave so much opportunity to do it like hashtag wombat on Instagram and see what they look like and their behavior. Guess what shape their poop is?
That
No
is
idea.
a segue.
Yeah.
Right? They poop cubes.
Really?
Cubes.
That does
And
not
it's-
seem anatomically possible.
Right? It's hilarious. I mean, how does this evolve? And the speculation is because on the open landscape, round droppings will roll away, and this is how they mark their territory. So the squares don't. The cubes don't roll.
I have a 64 terabyte drive that has only 12 terabytes of space left.
Oh, man.
Oh, left. Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be getting rid of some videos. So if anybody would like to buy some shaky stock footage,
Shaky stock.
So that's an element of adrenaline rush,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have some available. Multiple
Nice.
species. Not guaranteed to be in focus.
It's like light from the heavens. It's like an angel's wings behind him. What's this? Beyond the Wild podcast. That's cool, man.
You're only saying angel's wings because you were the model for the logo.
It was 5 nights, I think, 4 days on the ground with the bears, and focused on fishing bears. So that was what we wanted to do. We went at the right time of the year to try to focus on that. And we kind of thought we were going to miss some things because the salmon spawn hadn't really taken off, and water levels were of such that the salmon hadn't been able to make it upstream to where. But yeah, we got to see quite a few boars that were, fighting over fishing spots and fish when they were caught. And had the bear they called the old man, which was a great experience for me because when I was on my COVID trip, I did spend that one day in Hallow Bay. And in that one day in Hallow Bay, I didn't get to see this one bear that I was really hoping to see. They call him No Ears. And he's a giant boar, and he's been around for a long time. He's an old bear. And he's just a huge bear, really, really long body and huge body. And he's so long that he doesn't look as big as he is, if that makes sense.
There's some of the best grizzly fishing pictures ever taken on that trip that you had. Seriously, the light, the color of the salmon, the light on the bears, the eyes, the claws, the action. I remember when we were in the field during elk season and we were chatting, you'd mentioned you had one where the bear had leapt off the bank and was Superman, just totally horizontal over the water, suspended.
Right.
I mean, truly exceptional grizzly bear,
Thank you.
brown bear fishing images. So,
but this bear had learned how to make a living by going in, and she almost always exclusively on the boars, and she would go in there and steal a fish from a boar right after he had caught it. And I mean, you want to talk about like, what are you thinking? Like, you're going to, what are you doing? And we watched it happen so many times. It just got like, she's figured this out. These bears, like most of these boars are like, whatever, take it. I'll eat whatever, I'll go catch another one. Like, but what was so funny about it, and it got a little, Western at times, was because when she'd come in the area, those bears knew that she was going to try to steal their fish. So they'd get a little bit aggressive and, tensions would rise. And these two little cubs were like, I don't know, they were like on crack. I mean, they just all excited and looking around and, all worried and stuff. And they're worried for, fear of getting attacked by the bears as mom steals the fish and so on. And it was actually one of those cubs that had grabbed a fish and took off running that almost ran over one of the folks on the tour.
Editorial cover,
guaranteed cover,
whatever. You guaranteed cover. Yeah. If it doesn't get a cover, I'm going to be pissed. No.
That's a lot of metadata. That's good. You got to cover the base.
That's a lot of keywords. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so about
10
minutes.
I mean, that's
10 or 15
10 minutes on the editing. Unless there's an image from time to time, there's an image that I'll go in and clean some stuff up just because it's just a little bit distracting. And obviously if I transition over to Photoshop, it probably will take a little bit longer. Jason just uses the Loftus filter and it's a done deal.
Yeah, it's a one click. Nice.
It's not a one click, but I actually have been keeping track of this lately, and for me it's about 6 minutes per image on average. And like Ron said, there's exceptions. If it's a really good one that I really want to make work, that I just, miss something and I can still think I can make it work, I might spend 15, 20 minutes on it. I know. But I like to hear the click. I really do. For me, I like to know how many frames are going off and when I need to let off the button a little bit,
To do with the click, Jason's always doing the play-by-play too.
Yeah, I do a lot of talking.
Look over here. Look over here. You want to. Look.
I do talk to him a lot. That's for sure.
Well, that's awesome.
That's probably more annoying than the clicks. Yeah.
Just film you in the field shooting. That'd be fun.
You know what? That's a great idea, Mark. I think Jason Loftus mic'd up in the field. That would be a great YouTube video. I think
like the NFL mic'd.
Yep, we'll do mic'd up.
Yeah,
Mark,
no doubt.
Drop a pro tip bomb on us.
I've got this pro tip. This is a GorillaPod that a wonderful guest Erica on Caribou last fall had with her, and it's why I'm bringing it up. It is so versatile. It's something that honestly, for the price point and the minimal weight of it, that it could fit in any pack, and it will mount a phone. It will mount an action camera like a GoPro, and it will even mount and support a small mirrorless camera. But the legs on it totally bend. You can wrap it and it will stick to a tree branch. So you could have it elevated, or you could have it as a tripod on the ground. One of the reasons it's about the price. This is $30 Canadian. It's got a ball head. You can level it that way. It was $22 US. It's on Amazon. We don't have our affiliate link yet because we're new, cutting edge new, but it's on Amazon. So it's
coming.
Good. It's the Lamb Cow flexible camera tripod GorillaPod. And I have a photo. It's hilarious. We got a great time lapse, but I took my shoes, and my hiking shoes were on either side bracing the smartphone to get it. So whereas this is, it solves all of that because it can level. It's totally flexible. And again, the fact that you can switch it to your GoPro. Some things I like to do, and if there's a game trail through the forest and I know there's a moose coming through and I'm 150 yards ahead, I can pop this on a tree.
So, and then don't be afraid to leave your gear outside. And people that travel with me are always upset because the only reason I turn the heat on is if we're fogged up. Otherwise, there's no heat in the vehicle at all because I want it. And a lot of times I'm driving with the windows down. Doesn't matter how cold it is because I want my glass to be the same as the ambient temperature outside just in case that scenario comes up. Because the same thing can happen with your lens hood, especially with those large primes, those larger lens hoods. They retain a little bit of heat inside it, so you can create a little pocket of thermal right in front of the objective lens.
No, you just wait your turn, dang it. But what's interesting, right, is we often think of thermals, and you mentioned it already, in winter, and it's just that transition of the air, right? The difference in temperatures. But most of the time we think of thermals causing problems like when the sun's hitting the sagebrush or something, or there's dew on the sagebrush and the sun's warming it up and it starts to create that atmospheric interruption. But I even noticed it on our recent tour. As I was getting low to get some shots, it was cold enough that there was some of that coming off of the snow just because of the conditions outside, even though it was cold. And so sometimes everybody loves to get low to get shots, but be cognizant of that, because you might get low and you're so low that you're getting fuzzy images or blurry images. So pay attention to that. And sometimes you might need to kneel up or even stand up. You're not going to get that low angle shot just because of the conditions. But if you do stand up or kneel up, you're getting clear shots.
And it's not just even a large reproduction. A lot of my clients, know that if they're getting a high res image, they can crop in on that and change for what they want. And they're kind of mentally trained that way now to know that capability. And if something's delivered where it doesn't accommodate that, that starts to curve in their minds what the application variety of my images. So I don't shoot in high ISO. But I wanted to ask you guys where you're at these days. I still cap it at 800, and I can still see at 100%, not anything that would limit it, but noise there. I will shoot up to 16, but I won't go over 16 unless it's something exceptional. But the pivot nowadays is, and I wanted to ask you guys if you're doing this, and I've started to play with it, but I haven't done it enough to know the exact limitations yet. But the denoise software is raising the game what we can do in post.
Oh, since I started using Topaz, I'm comfortable at 2500, 3200 ISO is probably about as high as I'll go. But again, typically that's for movement. If I've got a subject that's still, just drop it and go with the long exposure. I'm more comfortable with that because you've got the in-body and lens stabilization. So you've got several stops of forgiveness at lower shutter speeds now with the modern equipment. And one of the things that he created basically a preset for Photoshop where he is darkening the shadows or deepening the shadows, and then he was going in, and this would just go in and manually add some sharpness to the edges. So, and his preset that he created a long time ago did exactly what Topaz does now.
A little bit. The light on a given day was too flat.
Absolutely.
It makes that image by selecting the subject and brightening 5 or 10%, by taking the background and darkening by 5 to 40%. You can just make that image dramatic.
Threw it on the monopod, mounted it on the monopod, and was able to get some brook trout that were on a red, or on a basically a area in the rocks where they've cleaned out and where they're actively courting. And you have to wait until you get a dead still pair. But I got a dead still pair of brook trout and was able to just grab one frame out of the video in 60 frames a second, and it made the cover of the photo contest issue, Wild and Wildlife.
Now, don't jump in. I want you to try and guess what this bird is. I'm going to do my best with this. And I know, okay, here we go. There's 2 parts to the call. So, and it's such a sign of spring. And I'm going to say one more thing. It's going to probably give it away before the calls, but it's got this dude can dance. He can dance. So the first call is really complicated. Meh. 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 That's when he's on the ground doing the disco.
Does he do a little bit of that?
And then, well, you're getting it. You're getting the jive here. So then he'll fly, and I've never tried this before except just tonight. And it's like it speeds up and up, higher and higher, and back down to the ground. Now I know that was only like 78% accurate. Yeah, we did I freeze? I'll do it again.
No, you're good.
All right.
Only 78%
Who's in
accurate.
the backyard?
I'm going with woodcock, but Tim Irvin is our guest tonight. Tim the Adventurer Irvin is our guest tonight. So Tim, what would your guess be?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sounds like an American woodcock to me, and I agree with Mark entirely. It's great sinus spring.
Oh, you guys were right on the den.
Oh, it was right at rendezvous site. It was in August, so they were away from the natal den then. By then they'd moved to this rendezvous site. And I just couldn't believe it. So I had foolishly put on a teleconverter onto this. I just had like a 100 to 400 lens. I put a teleconverter on it. It was probably, I don't remember if it might have been the old Canon 100 to 400. I don't think it worked very well with the teleconverter. Anyway, I got so excited by what was happening, and these wolves came down, and they an adult sort of poked its nose out of the grasses and saw us and sort of trotted down to check us out. And then the puppies followed. There ended up being, I think, 6 of them. And they followed this adult female down who came to check us out. And I was just completely underprepared. And I was completely overwhelmed emotionally by the experience. This is literally something I dreamed of. Like I was hoping to see a wolf that week, not like 6 puppies and an adult within, 15 minutes of arrival. And I shot all these images at f8, at shutter speeds of like a 200th of a second, shooting at like 640 millimeters or something. So, they were not very remarkable images, but what an experience. Like it just started to thin out, and then it swept across, and there were 2 wolves lying on the sand staring at us. And we have this really neat, I love the iPhone. This isn't meant to, I just should say a cellular phone. It's not meant to be the iPhone commercial. But we have this great iPhone video and audio recording leading up to this moment when the fog parted and we actually get to see these beautiful animals. There's a black wolf and a gray wolf together on the sand, and we were able to get some beautiful photos. But yeah, that was a neat one, which was an audio and visual experience in many ways. Well, that's it. And it's interesting because there's the temptation when you're processing those images to make it more clear,
Mm-hmm.
Using your different sliders to do this and that sort of gadgetry. But that's not the moment, right? The moment wasn't clear. The moment was, foggy and hazy, and maybe it looks like a noisy, crappy picture, but that's the story of that image, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right, though. You can get some really neat, very different feeling images in that kind of weather, I guess, than you can in, more clear light. Really unique. Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
For 6 days, we didn't see a wolf. We saw some tracks, and then on the last day, boom, 4 wolves showed up. And we had split into 2 groups. We each had each group had a radio. There was like 4 of us out there, and maybe it's 5. And the one guy was walking across this very large tidal flat, and we turned around, and he was walking in one direction, and there was a wolf following him. And the wolf was closing the distance. It was 200 meters. It was 150. It was 100 meters. And the guy didn't know I was there. And so we're calling him on the radio. We're like, turn around. But I think he had his radio off. And so we're just watching this unfold. And we're watching, the wolf sort of stopped. Like he had stopped. I think he was trying to photograph some eagles or something. And so he stopped. The wolf stopped. and he's, you can see the guy looking right and left, but it's right directly behind him, so he didn't see it. We're just, we're trying to get his attention. We're trying to wave, but without scaring the wolf. Anyway, eventually the guy turns around and there's a wolf standing there staring at him at, I don't know, 50, 75 yards. I don't remember how close. It was, well, actually, it's probably closer than that. It's probably more like 40. And this was one of those. This is one of those wolves that just wanted to come see what this guy was about. And the other wolves that showed up that day, they just kind of kept more of their distance. But it you know what? We had a great time that week. We had a wonderful group of people. We explored far and wide in this remote place that almost nobody ever gets to go to. So we were having a ball anyway. And then when those wolves showed up on that last day, all 4 of them, the energy was just electric. It was a really great finale to a trip.
You're a lot more grateful during those trips as well.
Yeah. We put in our time. And I think, when you're guiding a trip, it's always, I'm always nervous as a guide. I want people to fall in love with these places and these animals that I hold so dear. And the best way to do that is to do your best you can, prepare as much as you can, such that you're most likely to encounter these animals. Of course, you can't control the weather and all those other things that might make people uncomfortable or whatever. But, when you're out there, you always want to get a couple viewings, a couple sightings and some photos under your belt, right? So people can let their shoulders down and relax a bit. And on that trip.
No, it had nothing to do with that, honestly. I knew what I was getting into on this trip, honestly, as far as that goes. And I was actually excited to, big ones for me were the red-eyed tree frog and the eyelash viper. I really wanted to photograph the sloth, and, the monkeys were kind of a cool critter for me to, want to photograph. And I'll be honest up front, I wasn't as gung-ho about a lot of the birds. But I'll tell you what, the first toucan that flew in front of me and landed on the tree, and I was like, wow. I was shooting away. I was like, wow, this is cool. Okay, I get it. This is neat. To see that kind of bird in the wild is pretty amazing, honestly. So
every bird that flies by is just packed with color. It's just you couldn't. If you had a paintbrush and a palette, you couldn't put more color on these birds. And it was. When we were shooting that toucan that time when he came in, there was a bunch of noise and someone yelled, macaw. So we look around, here's these scarlet macaws, these green macaws flying over, screaming and yelling. We're trying to photograph these toucans, and there's this stuff going on all over the place. And
we stayed the night. The next morning they picked us up, and we were like 4 hours to get to the first location, like Kelly said. And then that first location we did, toucans and some parrots and just a bunch of different birds.
The macaws were there.
Macaws, yeah. There was a lot of really cool birds. And one morning shoot was actually focused on king vultures, which was like one that I wasn't even kind of on my radar really, but it was like really cool. I was blown away by them. They're really a neat bird, just the color and everything, the markings and that. And it was one of the only places you can do it, apparently, to get these king vultures. And then we did bats, flying bats, nectivorous bats. Did I get that right, Kelly?
Nectivorous, yeah.
Yep. But anyways, so, and that was the first location, but yeah.
So
I didn't realize.
Did you guys photograph the bats at night?
We did.
With flash setup?
Yep.
Yeah.
And did they use, where they cut a beam, or was it just a timing thing?
Just luck, praying and spraying.
A lot of click, 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 click. Oh, dang it. Click. Yeah.
No, we focused on the focal point of the flower.
Yep.
And then there was from there was depending upon luck, trying to get them the timing. There was no light on the flower or nothing. And we had a little bit of ambient light on the floor, so you'd see something flash out of the corner of your eye, and and we had to go mechanical shutter, and you had to go single shot. So we're just trying to as fast as we can to get the timing right. And and growing up as a kid, I've watched the cartoon King Arthur, the animated adult Disney King Arthur, and Archimedes, the owl, he's a speckled owl.
Yeah.
So we actually got
speckled or spectacled?
Speckled owl.
Okay.
Yeah. So we actually got to see the speckled owl that Archimedes was drawn after, and we got some really good photos of him too. He was pig. The guy was pointing. He's right there, and we're looking, and because we're looking for our owls, and the thing was like 3 times the height.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
The owls we're used to looking for here, it was a monster.
Yeah.
Actually, we didn't use a tripod.
No, we didn't
It
use
was
a
all
tripod either.
handheld.
Yep.
So I didn't need hardly any gear. It was probably the less gear we needed when we were shooting the reptiles than we did anywhere else. So.
Yep. Yeah, we did, and if you remember, we did shoot the macro for the frogs, and then the snakes. We actually shot the 70 to 200s.
You're right, because
it was a little.
We didn't want to be that close.
Right.
Yeah, we needed more reach. The yellow viper was pretty cool. You're not going to see that anywhere else either, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm with Kel. I would say for me it was. I would say very similar. I don't think I had like my goal to go in there, and Kelly knew this was the viper for sure. Was the eyelash viper for sure. That was the top of my list, right? But then all the birds really impressed me. Even some of the smaller birds that we photographed, just all the color they have, and the opportunities we had were just incredible. And king vultures were a surprise. And then on the last day, and Kelly alluded to this earlier, but the last day when we did the river tour, we ended up seeing a bare-throated tiger heron. And our guide called him in, and he did this whole display. And that blew my mind. I mean, I'd never seen a bird like that. It's incredibly beautiful, especially, you think of heron, you're thinking of a GBH, or you're thinking of it. Not that they're not pretty, but it's just, we're used to seeing those birds, right? Matter of fact, we drove by some GBHs, and they were kind of like calling them out. We're like, yeah, just a GBH. Yeah, we're good,
So people can go to the show notes and see them.
Yeah.
Describe what the Quetzal was.
Well, it's kind of a parrot-looking bird, kind of. The hair on its head and stuff is kind of very similar to a parrot, but it's green with a big red chest and a green feathers that go way down, really long, and they're split. But the fun part's when it flies, it looks like it's flying a wave. It took us a while to figure out that they come up, they dip and come up to their nest. And so if you're set up thinking it's going to fly into the nest, you end up getting half a bird. So once it did that a couple of times, we changed how we were setting up to catch it. But it's just the green and the red together, complementary colors in the same bird. The long split tail feathers it was just very unique and very pretty. And I got a lot of really, really nice bird shots that I wasn't looking for, just because you could not shoot it. You're walking down the trail with your 600, and this bird that's got 5 shades of blue perches on this little mossy stick with nothing around it, and those ended up being some of my favorite photos of the trip.
Yeah. And you still don't know what the bird is.
Oh,
no, it's a 5-shaded bluebird.
Yeah.
What happens first is you have your motion sensor, and I have that on like a little tiny tripod with bendy arms that I get from Walmart, and that motion sensor is on channel 1. And so channel 1 will detect something, and it will talk to the receiver on channel 1, which is plugged into the camera. And then on top of the camera, there's a transmitter, and that transmitter is on channel 2, and it'll talk to 2 receivers that are on channel 2 connected to flashes. So pretty much all of that works together simultaneously, and you get your flashes and your image at the same time, as long as your shutter speed's low enough. None of the DSLRs have the sync speed to really go over 1/200th, so during the daytime you might not have any flash. Yeah, that's how I got into it. I learned all about it, and it took me a long time to get everything together, and then it takes like 2 weeks for the stuff to come here from England, and
That's probably the worst part for you.
Yeah, for sure. 2x4s and lay them parallel, and then I'll take another 2x4 and make an H with it. Then I've got a little ball head attached to that, and that's what I'll put my camera on. It's really good because it's kind of like a snowshoe in the winter. You just have to think about like the snow in front of the camera, like kind of dig a hole in front of it so the snow fills in there instead of piling up in front of your camera.
That's a great tip.
In the summer, I use tripods. I use tripods in the winter, but mostly just for the flashes. Yeah, and with the cats, I want the camera down low, so I don't mind having it on that H pod I talked about. Kind of make what you could maybe say more of an artsy looking picture. I want to experiment with that some more, but for now, I'm just trying to capture the images that I really want and capture them good. So I'm trying to paint the scene really well with light. The way that I usually go about it is I'll have my camera in the middle, and then on one side pretty close to the camera, like not very off. I'm talking like angular, like it's pretty in line with what the camera's seeing. Is going to be my subject flash. It's going to be the flash that is a little closer, so it's going to light the subject more. And we're talking the animal, of course. It's going to light that, and then on the other side, so like let's say I put the subject flash on the right, we're going to have what I call a fill flash on the left, and it's going to be scoot back a little bit more and maybe even a little more angled out from the camera. A lion came. That was my first ever image, and I set it on a aperture priority. So I wasn't 100% sure if it was going to come back at the day. You never know for sure when a lion's going to come back to its kill, but mostly it's going to be at night. But I set it on aperture priority, meaning that the shutter speed is going to change depending on the light, and the aperture is going to stay fixed on that, like f8, f9 is usually what I use. So I had it ready if it came by at day, but at night it was going to take a long exposure. So it was taking 6-second exposure. But remember that flash is only, a fraction. So it keeps the animal still, and then it kind of paints the background with that longer exposure. So I was able to get some clouds. There's some stars in the back. Just a really cool image. And then a few weeks later, we found a really fresh kill that was killed probably just the night before, just a few hours old. The ribs had kind of been eaten on a little bit, so that was showing. And yeah, that one just blew my mind. What happened? I got images of a cat with like just meat in its mouth with this deer below it, and it's all in the frame. Nothing's cut off. I have a picture of the deer in the lion's mouth, picking the deer up, trying to rip the flesh off to expose more meat, and it was just the most insane thing. The whole time there's two foxes that would come by too, so it created some really cool images as well.
Or is there another reason for the Instagram handle?
So that actually is my name.
Okay.
Yes. So my name is Deirdre Janali Rosenberg, and I like my really tight knit circle calls me Dee Dee. And so yeah, I grew up in a mountaineering family, and named after the mountain.
Wow.
And yeah, so that is my real name.
That's really cool.
It's the best answer.
Some of my earliest memories are out canoeing and portaging and hearing wolves and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you can't tell by my accent, you can certainly tell by all of my like early memory stories, because they're so shaped from growing up there.
I love how much you appreciate all the little things. Like, I don't know of very many people that sit there, take in things, and appreciate literally the little things, like the little critters, the butterflies, the pika, I could just go on. And when everybody else is looking at the big things in the grand landscape, you're down there looking at the details and enjoying those moments and experiences. So I just great, big kudos to you. And you've actually taught me quite a bit about, how to slow down a little bit and how to pay attention to those things. So
that's awesome. That's honestly like the biggest compliment. All I ever want to do is share my nature with people, because I feel like if people just can pause and just slow down a little bit, it's astounding how many things you can look at and experience and sense with all your senses. I know so many people think that I have these like real crazy moments where like, can you believe this happened? And it's just kind of like, if you just slow down, if you just stop moving just for a second, it's amazing what can happen. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Pika, pika. Pika,
Pika. 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 I'm a Pika.
You're a
I'm
Pika.
Pika all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jamie, so is my friend. You might know him on Instagram. I know Jamie B. Wild on Instagram. He's so when we're in the field talking, it's Pika, and we have the conversation, because in my whole life as a biologist, I've been calling them pika. So you're going with Pika. Cool.
I'm going with Pika.
It's
Yeah.
simple.
Well,
It's
you've spent far more time with them than I have.
Yeah.
So what is it about Pika that you love?
Oh, man. So I grew up in northern Minnesota, but I spent about half of my time in the Rocky Mountains, just because of my parents doing expeditions and that sort of thing. And so I would oftentimes get left on the alpine tundra just to like have at it while they were summiting mountains or whatever. And so from my earliest memories too, like I'm just hanging out with Pikas. And I mean, I think recently, right, they've gotten like a good like PR agent or something because they've started to become like more popular with people and people know what they are. But that wasn't always the case, really. And so I really got into telling their stories and kind of photographing them and being around them just kind of as a means to be like, do you guys know that these animals are here? Like, they're so cool. You know, I have dedicated a good portion of my career to studying them. One of my favorite projects that I've been working on forever is that I'm trying to find all of the like quote unquote like unfound Pika colonies of the San Juan Mountains, to kind of show that they don't just live in the alpine, they don't just live in the subalpine, they like live kind of all over the place and they're popping up in places people don't expect. And so yeah, they're really cool animals. I love them. I know you've had guests on who have talked about that, like with elk and deer, and how it's just like this beautiful moment. And I feel like that with Pika a lot of the time. And then the other thing, of course, that's really fun is when there is a weasel going after them and you kind of see like their capabilities as they evade this very scary, very comparatively like large predator. They're really athletic, so that's really fun to always be in the middle of.
Success story of $20,000 raised for land, wildlife, and land conservation. So, just as a role model, how did you do that?
So, I have self-published 3 books. One is about my field notes on the American Pika. One is about 2 years that I spent tracking a herd of mountain goats through the San Juans. And then the other is about kind of my healing journey in the American Southwest after some of those near-death things and stuff that I had touched on. And I don't make money from those. I self-publish them and I fund them through like crowdfunding. But all of the money goes back to conservation. I don't make a penny from those. Like how I express myself through photography and always have. I feel the same about my expeditions and backcountry trips. It's a form of expression, and I don't really know how to explain that more than that. I feel like even living really rural like I do, even living so much with nature like I do, I can't be fully myself unless I'm in the wilderness, and I'm taking care of myself and no one else is taking care of me. And so, man, it's just like everything to me to be out in the wilderness. And so usually I'm packing a 70-pound pack. I bring, I bring my big, huge telephoto. I bring my wide angle. I bring my macro. I bring 3 or 4 camera bodies. I'm hauling it all in and I'm not going ultralight. I'm not taking it easy, and I'm trying to access places that I know no one else is going to be so that I can be by myself.
I'm in the Greater Toronto area, the Golden Horseshoe. I'm in Hamilton. And we are known as the city of waterfalls for the amount of waterfalls that we do have here. So I've had lots of access to those things when I began really taking photography serious.
I didn't know that. I'm 2.5 hours away from you. I didn't know about all the waterfalls.
Yes.
Really?
I have a few birder friends that have given me some really good tips of, certain times and certain, areas. So I really followed that. And it just became just, I guess, more or less an obsession of following the birds and trying to get those close images and sharp images of them, watching their behaviors, the different environments that we would see them in. Yeah, so I just fell in love with the birds.
So what equipment are you using for waterfowl now? For cameras?
I'm still using my D850. I've had it for 5 years, I think now. I'm still using that and my 200 to 500 zoom telephoto.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's been a great camera. I must say it has been dropped. It's gone for a swim and survived, thankfully. They usually start coming back, I think, around this time. November, December, the longtails will be in the harbor or just on the other side of the lift bridge there. The buffleheads will come in. And last winter, it wasn't cold enough, so our harbor didn't freeze.
But your macro stuff. So what are you using for equipment for macro? Like, look at, there's a fly on July 26th who is the boss here, but the detail on its eyes and the shallow depth of field, the crispness, what are you using? Are you using the same setup for that? You can't be.
No. So I'm using the Sigma 105 2.8 on my D850.
Okay.
I've recently, just the past couple of years, have been playing around with flash. So I still kind of go in between. I'm not techie by any means. I'm still trying to learn to utilize it properly with the diffuser. So some of my images are with flash and some of them are. I do believe the fly was with a flash. All you have to do is go out into your backyard. You can spend so much time, just playing around. But I just love it. I love it. Every time I go, I see something new. And it's kind of like the birds too. If you see an interesting insect, I go home and I, look it up or, research what plants do these like. And then you start to learn, if you want a milkweed beetle, you go to a milkweed plant or, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. My ambush bugs. I love ambush bugs. And they usually you start to learn that the time of month or the summer month where they start appearing. And then when they disappear, the world of insects is just so incredible. If you could just sit in just like a little bush of flowers and look on the branches and the flower top, you just start to see things. And then the more you look, it's almost like you train your eye. It's just fascinating. I just love it.
I see that. Yeah. And it's, you can't wrap your head around what's out there for insects. The buffalo tree hopper, that's one cool looking bug.
Flowers and just other different photography genres that don't really fit on my bird wildlife macro page, I guess you could say. But yeah, I've gotten into some of the flowers, just in like native plants that are around, and the details of those are just incredible. And you don't normally notice them until you take a picture, and then you bring that picture up and you're like, wow, there's so much detail to these flowers.
How many people miss all the beauty of those little details and the little things, by, like you said, looking down versus looking up, right? And I'm guilty of it all the time. I'm sure I walk right past some incredible opportunities, but it's just in that smaller world, and I'm not focused on it, So
I've often thought, what do I do with my Instagram page and my photography? And that's one of the things I'm really hoping to strive for, is just to, show the beauty of bees, pollinators, with everything that's happening with monarchs. They're in decline. Just to show the photography and the work and the beauty of them, in hopes of people, even if you just change one person, where you get them to go out and plant some things and, just to kind of help them out. So that's what I'm hoping to do with my photography, especially with the insects and the pollinators. Yeah, so much so that
what some people don't understand what it takes to get an image. And sometimes the kind of images you're trying to get, you're putting yourself in a pretty precarious situation a lot of times, and trusting the horses, trusting the animals, trusting the people around you. You know what I mean? So,
well, I feel like that's something that the three of us here, can immediately connect on, because, I would venture to say that the work that you guys do, while the work that we do can be serendipitous, especially, after knowing our equipment, stuff like that, there's a fair amount of planning that has to go into where you're going to, I couldn't tell you. I could drive up the mountain. I couldn't tell you a thing, but you guys could. And I think I think great images. Maybe better said, there's no happy accidents in great images. There's serendipity for sure, but to discount the fact that you guys don't know your equipment, or you guys don't know the terrain, or you don't know the animal. My goodness, there is a ton that goes into getting those images that you do. I'm seeing these kids grow up in the branding pen. And so when I go out there, I'm going out there with the mentality that, what I wouldn't give for that 5-year-old crush your neck hug. Man, I miss that. I miss being a daddy. I don't know how to be a parent to an adult, and it sucks. And my oldest says, you got to roll with it, Dad. And I don't know how to do that either, but I miss it. And so my mindset when I go out there is really capturing those relationships, because I know that time is going, and it's going dang quick, and we don't get it back. We all know that, if you guys have kids, it's that lament over and over, like, where does the time go? And man, if I look back, gosh, I wish, I neither here nor there, but I wish that I would have a volume of images of me and my kids in the branding pen, when they were little turds and teenagers and stuff like that. And I go into it with that mindset that you guys, my friends, some of my best friends, they will have a volume of work of their family. From little tykes to now being teenagers that are looked at to as responsible ropers to bring the calves to the fire. And then eventually they're going to graduate. And my gosh, I photographed some of our good friends when she was 14 years old, and then did her senior pictures. And then just this summer, I photographed her wedding and engagement. Just like, gosh. Technically speaking, when I started out, and here's something I don't think I've ever told anybody, but the Western world, brandings in particular, really honed my creativity. Those taught me, that particular activity taught me everything that I know today. And that is my own emotional side and tapping into that. And I remember sitting in a branding pen years and years ago, and I remember just completely underexposing the image, or another way of saying it, expose for the highlights, and you're going to underexpose an image. But I remember doing that and going home with it and thinking, holy cow, that's really emotional. Like, I'm not used to that. I'm used to like exposing for the whole image, and I wasn't on that particular day. And I went down that path and have never looked back. And I get this over and over where people are like, I don't know what to shoot. Okay, give yourself 15 minutes and just focus on faces. That's it. Kids' faces, people riding, people on the ground, doesn't matter. Take 15 minutes and focus on faces, and then take another 15 minutes and focus on details. Spurs, the rowel, tooling on a saddle, tooling on a spur strap. How about mustaches or something like that? Take another 15 minutes and look and just photograph those things that are in backlight. Mm-hmm. Okay, now take another 15 minutes and just focus on those things that are in front light.
It's funny, you spoke of something that goes right back to where your heart's at, and again, that just shines through in your images. I mean, your work's incredible. as soon as I came across your page, which was about a year and a half ago, I was just blown away. I was like, who is this guy? And then I found out you were local in Green City. I'm like, man, this is cool. He lives around the corner from my parents, I think, like I might actually be able to talk to this guy someday, so.
Always been attracted to water, but obviously the Inside Passage here is pretty darn special. I feel like a lot of the magic happens on the water. So there are certain things you can only see from the water, really, or obviously the sky, but things like glaciers that you can see, right? There's not a road that goes by them. So up here, the waterways are really a way of moving around. So a lot of people have liveaboards or sailboats or any type of boat, so they can move from small city to small city, or maybe I should call them port towns, not cities. But when you're up above them, you can see that they're in formation. And that moment when you realize they're not just like all on top of each other as a pod going through, they're literally purposeful. You're like, wait a minute, this is just so much more kind of than what I've ever thought could be. So yeah, I'd say that was probably one of my number one moments, just realizing that these animals are just so much more than when I even had thought they were. But it's so hard, right? Because you're like, okay, I want to grab my actual camera and then drone and then wait, phone. Oh, wait, no, you're right. So you're just constantly and kind of changing the modes or the technical aspect of the camera. It's also tough too because you get mesmerized, right? So even just you being there in the moment, you're like, wait a minute, oh my gosh, they're going back down now. They're going back down now. Oh wait, now I got to get something else up, right? So it's just constant. And orcas, probably a bit like beluga whales, right? They're moving. It's not like they stop to like look at you, pose, or anything like that. So
January 21st, you posted a humpback that was going through some aquatic vegetation. Then all of a sudden at the end, so you always see images of the bubble net feeding with the whales breaching the water, but to see it from above, it just tells the rest of that story and what's actually going on, and it's a pretty spectacular clip.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you bring that one up, because when we were actually, I think it was early in the morning when we captured that one, we just saw a whale doing something. There was just some kind of rumbling, right? There was something going on, but he couldn't tell what it was. And it was doing it multiple times. And we would see a peck come up or just like its tail, but we weren't sure what was going on. So we threw it up. And that's when we noticed, oh my gosh, it's a bubble net, but it's only a single whale. Because typically it's a pod, right? It's not just one. We're like, are we actually seeing what we think we're seeing? No.
And your eagles, I mean, again, I see what you're saying. You had 7 million views on the one. It's just so popular, which congratulations. That's awesome. But even more congratulations in staying your course for what you love to do and putting that out. And I can see the dance, the balance with, what we perceive as important. And it's different for everybody. What is the end game? What is the application of social media? Is it sharing with friends? Is it sharing with your audience? Is it to grow business? I mean, they're all very different approaches depending on the desired outcome.
We don't have a humpback anywhere in Wyoming, so that's never going to, I always want to see that.
Cool. Well, it sounds like we're already creating a list for when you're up here. That's cool.
The list is long.
Yeah. Well, that was very kind of all of you. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap for Season 1. There is so much more to come in Season 2. Join us in 2025 for more of Beyond the Wild.